PUD so that we can take a final look at some of the questions that we've had here and some of the, hopefully have some answers, floodplains and things of that nature and you know, better description of parking and some of those kinds of issues. By holding a public hearing, frankly, I don't see any benefit to it at all. It just seems like it's going to just take more time, and on top of that, we would still have to make a decision which would hold the city council back for another meeting or two anyway. It is the city council's responsibility. We simply propose, they have to adopt it, and they have to hold a public hearing regardless. And on top of all of that, the applicants will have to come back with a detailed site plan for specific questions that obviously have to deliberate over. So my recommendation is not to do a public hearing. If anybody else has a different thought on that matter, please let me know. We can hold a discussion.
I agree. The planning commission is going to, or the city council.
Has to hold a public hearing. Yeah, they have to hold one, so it just seems like a waste of time on our part.
Yeah.
Thank you. And then secondarily, I think we have to, I think we've pretty well discussed all of the points here that Andy's pointed out. I feel fairly comfortable with it. Is there any questions on any of them?
One thing we did a good job in getting answers as we were going along.
I think that was really helpful from the applicant's part. I really do. What I would like to do then is propose that we have Andy, again, pull together all of the information for the PUD rezone in a fixed form so that we've got it written down, and then we can take a look at it and if we have to make any changes or things like that at our August meeting. And that way, at that point, we could take a vote on whether or not we want to pass it on to the city council or delay it or whatever we want to do. But that would give us the option at that point to do that. And I think that's probably the best method of doing this at this point. Does anybody on the city or on the planning commission have any objections to that sort of plan? Andy, have we given you enough directions here?
Yes, just so we're clear, in addition to researching these, so I have 4 issues here to research for you: parking, review by the TPW and city engineer, a response or some commentary on the demands on public services and facilities, and some information on floodproofing. Those are kind of the 4 issues that you had identified that you wanted some input on. And then, in addition to that, you're just sort of clear looking for written findings to send this to City Council. It could be adopted at the August meeting.
Correct. Okay, is everybody comfortable with that? One round here of public questions.
I have
Name, address, please.
Denise Barker, 901 North Jefferson. My question to Andy is that you maybe add to that list to find out if this is in the historic district of the city. Because if it is, then the sleekness of the look of the outside may have to be different. I'm all in favor of this. I think it's a wonderful use of this land, and I told people it looks like I wouldn't mind living there myself. But I don't want to have to walk 2 or 3 blocks to park my car. And I don't think that a private project should come in and assume that they are going to usurp city parking spots. Because there are times when you go to the library and that lot's full with library people, and you know that's the first lot that's going to fill up with people that don't have a spot in your lot. So I really go along with Commissioner Plank in saying that you have to provide parking for your own people. It's your project, it's a private project, and you can't, under my opinion, usurp city lot spaces just because they're there. Those spots are there for all of us, not just the people that are living there. But I think it's great. I think the whole thing is great. I think the idea is perfect, but if it's in the historic district, it may have to look a little less sleek. From looking at the picture that you had up there, and I'm not real good in black and white, it looks a lot like Impact Church. The whole neighborhood is very historic. The downtown is historic. If it is in the historic district, it should look like it belongs there.
Thank you.
I'm going to make a Hail Mary request. You guys ready? Andy, if I understand what you've written, it is possible for you to make, for this body, to make a tentative recommendation, right? Because you've got some things on here that need to be addressed. Can you make that recommendation tonight to the city council and save us a month? We've already been before you. We were, I think, once, maybe twice before the park commission for who knows what reason. And I'm wondering if you can address those things and you can work with me and Todd and the other guys on that, and those are noted and clarified, and those issues are stated that we're going to come to the city council with those things. Can we save ourselves a month? I know it's hot. I know it's July, but Chris isn't going to be wearing shorts in a few months. Snow's going to be flying, and months matter, are really, really important to us right now. So I don't see anything in here that any of the issues that you're going to research, Andy, that are like, uh-oh, right? None of these are huge issues. Would you agree?
Trying to address this question. So we wrote in our report that the planning commission can make a tentative recommendation, and that's true. But even if they did that, the ordinance requires that the planning commission draft written findings.
Right. Well, okay.
So
Fair enough.
even if there was a written, even if they made a tentative recommendation tonight, they'd still have to come back.
and vote, which would be
And vote.
okay.
So that's kind of what they're doing now.
Well, that's why they're called Hail Marys.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, all right. Not all of them are caught. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Any others? Okay. At this point, then, you've got your marching orders, your directions,
Yes.
and you're comfortable. I believe at this point, we can go on to B of our new business, the CBD cannabis oil.
Thank you for the
Thanks,
information you
guys.
provided.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Thank
Andy.
you.
It's very, very helpful.
All right, so at the last meeting, the planning commission recommended approval of its recreational marijuana special land use amendment to the city council. The city council presently has it. Following that, that motion, there was some discussion on the planning commission about you're seeing these various retailers around the city selling, advertising CBD oil. So you asked us to take a look at that, which we did. So we did a little bit of research here and kind of, so in this, we have a fairly short memo here that just kind of explains some of the differences. So the biggest one is this THC concentration. If it's below 0.3%, it's not considered marijuana, and therefore it's not subject to regulation by the Act. And further, products like that are not subject to the Controlled Substances Act and now are not on the list of Schedule 1 narcotics, and so a lot of that federal regulation has since gone away. So while I think I'm summarizing this memo quite a bit here, but the long and short of it is that there isn't any evidence that CBD oils have a psychoactive or a psychological effect the way marijuana does, and the way other substances do, like alcohol. It's not something that would be subject to the Act, and kind of how we concluded this at the end was to state that it's, for all intents and purposes, it's just another retail product. Yes, it's derived from marijuana, but, you know, they've been making marijuana clothing and necklaces and bracelets and stuff for a long time. It is still able to be sold legally. I mean, you know, light on a fire, that doesn't mean it's gonna have the right effect on you, because again, it doesn't have that THC concentration that's necessary to do that. So unless the product, in our view, unless a product has some sort of clearly identifiable deleterious effects on properties, you know, like selling adult, you know, products, for example. Alcohol is one of them, that is again sometimes subject to special regulation. A lot of times bars or places that sell or serve alcohol are subject to a higher level of scrutiny by the local, you know, government. In this case, I don't think that, we haven't seen any evidence at this point that CBD oils and similar products are, you know, rise to that level of concern. And so our recommendation is to not do anything at this time as far as zoning is concerned about specific regulation of those products. I mean, it's common, you're going to see it everywhere. You already are seeing it everywhere. There's coffee shops and video stores and lots of other places that have started carrying these fairly recently. And I just don't think that there's enough evidence to support specially tailored regulations for that one, you know, for carrying that one specific product.
Commissioners, any thoughts?
I think the comments that we made last time regarding it weren't necessarily CBD specific. I appreciated the memo on it, and you know, I understand the point on it. I think I was talking about in part the vape shops, which I now notice have the CBD, you know, stickers in the windows, or so it wasn't necessarily CBD specific, but just vape shops, which the other things they sell in there, of which I don't like, you know.
And nicotine
So many of them
products
are
and
unregulated in any kind of way. There's probably nothing we can do. It's just that the demeanor of a vape shop is almost exactly the type of thing you're trying to avoid by pushing the marijuana shops out of the historic district. And there's really nothing we can do about these vape shops. They're already in there, whatever, and they have that kind of atmosphere.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, you know, the issue that we look at with stuff like this is you can't specifically exclude a lawful use of land, right? So you can't say there are no, whatever it is, we don't allow lumber yards in our town, or we don't allow whatever it is you don't like, you know, adult businesses was one, you know, we don't want it. Well, you can't do that. You can't totally exclude any otherwise lawful use of property. And so the question that we ask ourselves as planners when it comes to things like this is, what is it specifically about that use that is undesirable, and how do we regulate that? And I think with the example of something like a vape shop, if someone came in with a site plan to build one tomorrow, we'd consider it probably just a retail business, because that's what it is. And we typically don't get too involved into the specific nature of the product that they're selling, because it's really hard, I think, for the city to say, well,
Sorry.
there may be a demonstrated need for it, but, you know, we don't like X, Y, and Z. I mean, if there are certain issues with how the property is maintained, or, you know, how they decorate their buildings, or how they maintain stuff, or whatever, then let's deal with those things. But it's really hard to target it based on simply selling it, because somebody could have a vape shop that fits in perfectly with downtown. They could have nice, you know, I mean, seriously, like, I mean, if you're selling it, if it's on the inside of the building and it's a retailer downtown, right? I mean, you could conceivably do it and have it be, and have the character of the building, as far as zoning is concerned, fit right in with downtown. You might not like what they're doing. You might not like the unregulated kind of Wild West aspect that some of those products are totally unregulated, and I agree, there are some significant health and safety, concerns with those products, because they're just, people don't know what's in them, they could be really dangerous, and I agree with that. But I would question, I guess, whether or not it's the appropriate place for the city to step in. And
It just seems like
regulate that kind of zoning.
like a bit of a double standard just brought about by the timing of the product versus regulations, right? So the pot guys are all highly regulated, and so we're able to like say, well, we don't want you down in the historic district, so now they're shoved out to the outskirts of town. But meanwhile, the vape folks, there was no regulatory framework for them, and they're right on Main Street, and it's like,
Yeah.
It's-
That's because the state just doesn't want anything, they don't see it as a threat, right?
Yeah, I mean, well, I think, again, my somewhat informed opinion here, I guess, is that it's because the CBD products don't have that psychoactive or psychological effect that marijuana does, that's the rub, right? So just like we don't regulate somebody selling NyQuil even though it has alcohol in it, because we recognize that you're not gonna, most people aren't gonna drink enough for it to have that kind of effect. It serves a different purpose. And similarly, we probably wouldn't regulate somebody that sells tobacco products. If you have a tobacco shop that sells cigars and tobacco products and everything else, despite that you could argue, I suppose, that there's a similar, if not more well-documented health concerns with those items, whereas we still probably wouldn't be in a position to say, no, you're not allowed to operate. But because marijuana is one, to agree with it or not, there is a huge, or there will be soon a large regulatory framework to deal with it, and because there is a fairly well-documented, psychological and psychoactive effect of using marijuana, just like many communities do regulate restaurants that serve alcohol differently from those that do not. And so in a lot of places, they'll say, well, if you serve alcohol, you're going to be special land use because, you tend to run later, you tend to be louder, you tend to be more issues if you're serving alcohol than if you're not. So those kinds of things can be dealt with a little bit differently. But I guess I struggle with what the justification would be to treating that specific land use differently. I understand the concern about the product, and I get it, but I would, I guess, question or maybe caution you as to, we need to clearly identify what's objectionable about that land use and how selling that would, what the effect would be of selling that.
no, I appreciate it.
I think we're caught in the middle here of, yeah, the vapes are very dangerous to kids and, a gateway drug, or they're advertised. I mean, I teach high school, and it's like, it's like running rampant. And it's like, and then here it's like we're tying the hands of the marijuana people for the same reasons, but yet it's crazy. I mean, I see the similarities and concerns. It's like, how can we control one and not the other when they both do the same thing? But you're right, tobacco, alcohol, same thing. Where do you stop? Where do you draw the line? Luckily, the state says there's regulations on marijuana. That's our backing, I think. This is why we're making this decision. Unfortunately, yeah, we agree, but we have to make it based on the state regulates, or the federal government regulates, or whoever it is. It drives me nuts that there's vape shops down here and students get hooked immediately. It's like crazy, and it's horrible health effects. I can't do anything about it.
Well, so it's just something to think about if regulatory frameworks do pop up that regulate. I mean, that's the thing with the vape shop you know, it's not like it's, the culture around it isn't a come enjoy a fine cigar and our humidor and our amazing tobacco shop and all that. It's vapes, sweet,
Yeah.
awesome, cool, you know, so it's it's just different. So
Yeah.
you can't do anything until there's a regulatory.
Well, I mean, there are a lot of communities and a lot of places where they have highly specific land uses defined in the ordinance. So they'll say, oh, furniture stores to be, you know, they'll have this huge list of all these different types of retailers, basically. Furniture store and lumber yard and hardware store and taxidermist, you name it, they'll have all these different things that, you know, and it's hard once you start enumerating out specific things, and it's kind of like, where do you stop? Because there's always going to be something that wants to do something that's not listed in there. And then if you have a whole bunch of stuff listed, you can't, it's hard to, and you got to always go back and amend the ordinance every time somebody wants to do this one thing. And so, you know, our concern with some of those is that, one, it makes, you know, practically speaking, it makes zoning really, really hard, because every time somebody wants to do something that you haven't thought to include in the ordinance, you have to go back and amend it, and everything takes forever, and there's a huge process involved, not huge, but there's a lengthy process involved in doing that before they can even apply. And then, yeah, secondly, is more of a philosophical question, I guess, about, you know, cultural, you know, what's the city's role, and kind of looking at making cultural judgments, good or bad, and all that kind of thing, which I guess I'll leave to you guys to do.
Anything else on this subject? Okay, staff report. Sue, anything?
I have nothing further.
Andy, anything else?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Before we get to the commissioner's report.
Sorry.
No, that's okay.
Just very quickly, as I was walking out, City Councilman Jim said, well, your Hail Mary was wrong. He said, what you should have done is ask for a special meeting, go back in there and ask for a special meeting. I said, okay, I'm not familiar with special meetings. Is that a thing? Or doesn't it really, if it's a waste of time, guys, I don't want to waste.
To be honest with you, I think it's a waste of time.
Okay.
We will decide this matter at our August 12th meeting.
Okay,
And then that gets passed on to the city council.
and I can't see how 2 weeks.
So they can operate right after that. It also gives Andy appropriate time
Right.
to come up with the answers.
As I just said to Todd, we've got some stuff we got to wrestle with for, but
Yeah.
I told him, I told Jim I'd run back up and ask.
Yeah, thank you.
I felt like this meeting was pretty special.
Especially CBD, man, yeah.
Yeah, they're all,
All right, no more comments?
they're all special. Thank you.
Thanks.
Commissioner remarks. Mike? Anything?
Good.
I'm good. Glad to be back.
I'm real good. You're real good? Well, I'm really fine.
My own issues,
I'm good too. Thanks, Andy, for really good presentation tonight. Really appreciate it. And we will see everybody back on August the 12th. I believe.
Do we want to save these things?
We'll get a whole new batch of this stuff, won't we?
Yeah, I mean, they should be, I mean, you might want to save them for now if you want to go back and forth and see what's changed versus what's not, so you might want to hang on to them for a little bit. Just
Until the August 12th meeting, then
so
we'll,
you can tell what the difference is. So,
because the next one will be a site. review anyway, so
we'll make sure that we
that
cover
will
it
hone in a little more soon. So, I need a motion for adjournment.
Got one here. I'll support.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
I stand adjourned.